Here is something that will stop you in your tracks. From the earliest centuries of Christianity, the Holy 40 Days fast was dedicated entirely to the passion of our Lord on the cross. The Apostle Paul himself said he determined to know nothing among his listeners save Jesus Christ and Him crucified. Corinthians chapter 2. That single decision shaped Western civilization. What would it look like if you made that same decision this week? The Passion of Christ is not just a religious story. It is the most precise fulfillment of every promise ever made to mankind. The most particular characteristics of the one promised by ancient revelation were fulfilled with all precision in the account of the suffering Jesus. This is not mythology, this is history with surgical accuracy. If you have ever doubt whether God keeps His word, the Passion narrative is your answer. Think about the last words of someone you loved before they died. You remember every syllable. You replay those words because they carry the weight of finality. Now consider that the instructions Christ gave in His last days, lofty and holy, are, as the fathers say, the last testament of a dying father. What son would not hold dear the last words of his father? These are those words. Matthew 26 records a precise moment when Jesus had finished all these sayings. He said unto his disciples, "You know that after 2 days is the feast of the Passover, and the Son of Man is betrayed to be crucified." He did not panic. He did not run. He announced his own death with the calm of a man who already decided. That kind of peace under pressure, that is what the fathers call nepsis, watchful stillness of soul. And here is the paradox that should shake you awake. While Jesus was announcing his death openly and peacefully, the Sanhedrin was meeting in secret, consulting together, plotting how to seize him by subtly and kill him. Two kinds of power were operating simultaneously in the same city. One was transparent, holy, and unafraid. The other was hidden, fearful, and deadly. You live in both of those worlds every single day. The fathers make a stunning observation about Christ's ministry. He was not merely a teacher, he was the unprecedented prophet, the exemplar of the world, the light of the world. John chapter 8. Never had a man spoken like this man, said the officers sent to arrest him. Even his enemies were stopped by the sheer weight of his words. When was the last time truth stopped you mid-sentence? In the Philokalia, Abba Isaiah warns that the soul who feeds on distractions slowly loses the capacity to hear what is true. The crowds who gathered around Christ were doing something the modern world has almost entirely lost. They were standing still, listening with their whole selves, storing his words in the depths of the soul. We consume hundreds of voices a day. Christ spoke and the world went quiet. There is a lesson there for every one of us. Christ was the final and complete enlightener of the world. Matthew 24. His teaching was the natural conclusion to the work of all the prophets, and to the great teacher who had gone for 3.5 years completing what no one had been able to complete. And then he handed it to 12 ordinary men. Think about that the next time you feel unqualified to carry something important. Now let us talk about Judas, because Judas is the most uncomfortable mirror in the entire gospel. He was not a stranger of the street. He was an apostle. He had witnessed every miracle, heard every word, been present at every table. And yet, as Saint John Chrysostom writes, the passion for money grew little by little, was cultivated and nourished everything. Faith, gratitude, love, little by little. That is how it always happens. The evangelist Matthew tells us that Judas went to the chief priests and said, "What will you give me, and I will deliver him unto you?" Matthew 26. They covenanted with him for 30 pieces of silver. According to the law of that time, 30 shekels was the price of a slave. The Lord of creation, the light of the world, the fulfillment of every prophecy, valued at the price of a slave. And Judas thought that was a good deal. The prophet Zechariah had foretold this exact price centuries earlier. So they weighted for my price 30 pieces of silver. Zechariah 11. Matthew records that this prophecy was fulfilled to the letter. We are not dealing with coincidence. We are dealing with a God who is so far ahead of history that he pre-announced his own sale price. And still, being people that hold the facts before their eyes, we find it hard to trust him with our small problems. Saint John Chrysostom, yes, asks a devastating question about Judas. What compelled him to commit such a black deed? His answer is this: it was the passion for money that led him to secret thievery, that led him to bartering with evildoers. So, the Philocalias, Evagrius would recognize this immediately. Avarice is the root of passions because it chains the soul to the visible and makes the invisible feel unreal. Is any part of your soul currently chained to something visible? Here is what terrifies me about the Judas story. He made his decision gradually. The fathers say that the passion of money had arisen in Judas' soul long before the 30 pieces of silver were ever mentioned. By the time he walked into the room and said, "What will give me?" the decision had already been made in a place no one could see. This is why the fathers insist on watching the first movement of the thought, not the action, but the seed before it takes root. The Sanhedrin needed Judas because they feared the people. Luke 22. They wanted to take Jesus out of sight of the multitude, away from public witness. And Judas gave them exactly that: the absence of the multitude, the private moment, the betrayal in the dark. Sin almost always asks for privacy. It does not want witnesses. It does not want light. The moment a thought in you begins negotiating for darkness, that is the moment to be most alert. Chrysostom ends his reflection on Judas with a direct address to us. Hearken, all you lovers of money, who suffer from the sickness of Judas. He is not speaking about extreme greed. He is speaking to ordinary people, people like us, who allow the passion for gain to gain more and more power over us little by little. The cure, he says, is firmness, rising up against the passion as soon as it moves, with all strictness before it puts down roots. That is a daily practice, not a one-time resolution. So the passion of Christ is described by the fathers as the epitome of his whole life, pure, holy, and divine. It is in the light of the cross that his love for man, his submission to the Father, his meekness, his innocence, his estrangement from everything earthly, all of it becomes luminous and manifest. You cannot truly know who Christ is by reading only about his miracles. You must stand at the cross. Everything else is preparation for that moment. So here is the invitation I leave with you today. The Apostle Paul called the crucified Christ the power of God and the wisdom of God. 1 Corinthians. Not a symbol of defeat, not a tragedy, power and wisdom. The passion is not the end of the story, it is the engine of the story. And the good news is this, that engine is still running. It is available to you right now. And it requires nothing from you except the willingness to stop, look, and not look away. Come back next time, so we are going deeper. God bless.